Good morning students. Today I shall be discussing about the topic called event-driven programming in Java. So let's start with event-driven programming. One of the important features of the graphical user interface applications is the capability of handling events. An event is an occurrence of something such as the click of a mouse button, moving a mouse, pressing keys on a keyboard, or selecting a menu item. And such events can be handled using the graphical user interface applications. So in case of the GUI applications, we can use both the keyboard and the mouse to interact with the application. And when the keyboard and the mouse interacts with the application, it initiates events such as the clicking of a mouse button, moving a mouse, etc. Now Java provides a set of methods to handle the events. These set of methods are the abstract methods and have been prototyped inside different interfaces like the action listener, mouse listener, keyboard listener, mouse motion listener, and the item listener. We call these methods as abstract methods because they are short and simple. Now listeners are those components of an event that defines a method which executes a series of actions in response to the event. And the method that we are talking about are simple and short. So those methods are the abstract methods. Now let's discuss about the components of the event-driven programming. Following are the components of an event-driven programming in Java. The first one is the event source object. So the source which initiates an event, that is known as the event source object. For example, when a user clicks on an action button or selects an item from a menu or types some text in a text box, then the button, menu, or the text box are the objects of the event source respectively. So when the user clicks on an action button, we can say that the action button is the event source. Or when the user selects an item from a menu, we can say that the menu is the item source. And again, if the user types something in a text box, if he types some text in a text box, then we can say that the text box here is the event source. So in order for an event to occur, there has to be an event source. And the examples of such event sources are action button, the menu, the text box, and there are more event source as well. Some of them are checkboxes, radio buttons, password fields, and so on. So that's all about the concept of event source. Then come below, the second point is all about event object. When an event occurs in Java, the event belongs to a certain event object. Say for instance, for a mouse click event, that mouse click event shall belong to a particular object known as the mouse event object. Such type of event object is also known as the event message object. The examples of such event objects are the action events, key events, mouse events, window events, and so on. So just remember that when any event occurs, there has to be an event source because the source initiates the event. And the next thing is the event object. So when an event occurs, the event should belong to a particular object known as the event message object. For example, the mouse click event, when it happens, it should belong to the object called mouse event object. Now let's come to the next component of event-driven programming, which is the event listener. Now the event listener is that component of an event-driven programming which defines a method where action is taken in response to an event. That means whenever any event occurs, certain series of actions need to be executed, and that is done with the help of the method which is prototyped inside a listener. Now the following figure demonstrates the event handling mechanism in Java. See the first box. It denotes the event source. So whenever any event occurs, such as the click of a mouse button, or when the user selects an item from a menu or types some text in a text box, then the button, menu or the text boxes are known as the event source. So for the event where the user clicks on a mouse button, the event source is the mouse button. For the event where the user selects an item from a menu, the event source is the menu. For the event where the user types some text in a text box, the event source is the text box. And once the event source generates an event, an object is generated. That object is depicted by this second box. The objects describes the source and nature of the event, and we call that object as the event message object. So remember, any event that occurs shall belong to an object. For instance, the mouse click event belongs to the mouse event object. The key press event belongs to the key event object, and we call such objects as the event message object. And the third box, as represented in the form of an oval shaped figure, is the event listener. So once the objects has been generated for an event, certain series of steps or actions need to be undertaken in response to that event, and that task is performed by the event listener, which defines a method in response to an event that will initiate certain actions. And the methods defined by the listeners are prototyped inside the listener. Let's start the new topic known as the event handling methods in Java. Java provides a list of methods that can be implemented in order to handle different types of events. These methods are the abstract methods, and they are prototyped inside different interfaces. Usually the interfaces are the listeners. The chart below shows the different types of methods that are prototyped inside different listeners. Now for the interface named action listener, there is a method called void action performed. This method takes an argument called AE, where AE is the object of the class action event. So in this case, here AE is the event message object. So this interface called action listener defines a single method that is used to handle the click event of a button. That means when the click event of a button occurs, this interface by the name action listener defines a single method to handle the click event of a button, and the method is void action performed that takes AE as the event message object for the class called action event. And it is this method which shall execute a series of actions in response to the event called the click event of a button. Then come to the next interface known as the key listener. This interface defines three methods to handle the keyboard events like key press, key up and key down. So these are the three methods: void key pressed, which gets executed whenever the key is pressed. Then come below the void key released method. This method executes whenever a particular key is released. Then the next method is the void key type method. This method gets executed whenever a particular key is typed from the keyboard. So the void key pressed method gets initiated whenever a particular key is pressed. The void key released method gets executed whenever a particular key is released, and the void key typed method gets executed whenever a particular key is typed. And each of these methods takes KE as the event message object, which belongs to the class key event. And each of these methods performs a series of actions when the event such as key press, key up and key down occurs. Note that when the key is up, it means the key is released, and when the key is down, it means that something is being typed through the keyboard. So when the key down occurs, then this method gets activated, which is key typed. Then let's come to the next interface name, which is the mouse listener. This interface defines 5 methods to recognize when the mouse is clicked, enters a component, exits a component, or the mouse is pressed or released. And these are the 5 methods. The first method, that is void mouse clicked, gets activated whenever a particular mouse button is being clicked. So whenever the mouse button click event occurs, this method shall get executed. And the object that it takes is ME. This is the event message object belonging to the class mouse event. Then there are methods such as void mouse entered. This method shall get activated whenever the mouse enters a particular region. Then the mouse exited method. This method shall get executed whenever the mouse exits a particular region or an area. Void mouse pressed method. This gets executed whenever a particular mouse button is pressed. Then the mouse release method. This method gets executed whenever a mouse button is released. So depending upon the event, such as the mouse click, mouse entered, mouse exit, mouse pressed, okay, based on those events, the corresponding methods are being executed or shall get executed. Then come to the next interface, which is the mouse motion listener. This interface defines 2 methods to handle the mouse moved and the mouse dragged events. So when the mouse drag event occurs, the method void mouse dragged gets activated. Or when the mouse move event occurs, the void mouse moved method shall get executed. Now each of these methods take an object called ME of the class mouse event. This object ME is the event message object. So each of these methods are defined by the listener known as the mouse motion listener. And whenever the corresponding event occurs, okay, the particular method will execute the series of actions corresponding to that particular event. Now let's come to the next interface, which is the Windows listener. Okay, this interface defines 7 methods to handle the window events, like when a window is activated, closed, deactivated, de-iconified, iconified, opened or quit. Okay, now for such events there are 7 methods. So for the corresponding 7 events there are 7 different methods. For the first event, that is when a window is activated, okay, for this event the method that shall get executed is void window activated, where WE is the event message object belonging to the window event class. Then for the second event, that is the window gets closed, okay, for this event the method void window closed shall get executed. For the third event, that is window deactivated, okay, for that the method void window deactivated shall get executed. Then for the next event, that is window open. Okay, for that the method void window opened shall get executed. Similarly, for the events such as window closed, window closing, window de-iconified, okay, the corresponding events such as void window closing, void window closed, void window de-iconified, void window iconified shall get executed. And each of these methods prototyped inside the Windows listener interface shall execute a series of actions in response to the events. Then come to the next interface, which is text listener. This interface has a single method that handles the text changed event of a text box. So here is the single method identified as text changed. This method takes an argument called TE, which is the event message object belonging to the class text event. So whenever any text that you change inside a text box, okay, for that event this method gets executed, which is void text changed. And in response to that event, certain series of actions shall be executed by this method, because this method is prototyped inside the text listener interface. So with this I end my presentation here. That's all for today.